Tim.
In 1982, Roger Corman produced the movie Forbidden World, which is also known as Mutant. This was in response to the smash hit that was the original Alien movie. It wasn't the only film to ride on the success of that movie. There were other films like Insemnoid, Galaxy of Terror as such, but this was one such example. Now, 9 years later, in 1991, Roger Corman again produced a film that was essentially a remake of Forbidden World, this time calling it Dead Space. The movie was directed by Fred Gallo and starred the Beastmaster himself, Marc, but also starred an early role for Bryan Cranston. Yes, Heisenberg is in this movie. So what is the story? Well, it focuses on this remote scientific outpost on this planet where they are attempting to find a cure for this virus, which is going around and essentially killing anyone. It's the worst virus you've ever seen, etc. And there seems to have been some type of accident where they are trying to essentially grow an antivirus to combat this. But this antivirus has literally taken a life on its own and has turned into some type of creature in a kind of cocoon. Now, they send off a distress signal, which is answered by Marc Singer's character and his trusty robot sidekick, who are, although it's never really established what they actually are, they're some type of patrolman or something like that. And they are in need of some assistance themselves because they've just been in a space battle using footage from Battle Beyond the Stars. Their ship is in need of repair. So they figured they could have two birds with one stone, get their ship repaired and also help this scientific colony out. When they arrive there, they find obviously this cocoon is still kind of intact, but all of a sudden it explodes, sending out a parasite into one of the scientists, which of course then grows and gestates into a ever-growing alien-style kind of monster. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. Now, a lot of people, if they're a big fan of kind of 80s and 90s science fiction, and if they've seen the pair of these movies, i.e. Forbidden World and this one, most people, I think, would say probably Forbidden World was a stronger film. It had a little bit more kind of hard gore in it and a little bit more kind of nudity, and it was possibly just a little bit more adult in its kind of approach. Whilst this one dials down the sex and gore, but has a little bit more in regards to kind of exposition and sort of talking scenes and dialogue and things like that. So it tries to be a bit more of a character-driven movie. That's not to say there isn't any kind of like monsters and gore and stuff, because there is, just a little bit more in the kind of the original movie. So, well, let's talk about what I think works in this film. Now, if you're kind of like familiar with Roger Corman, you know he pumps out loads of kind of cheapo science fiction and fantasy movies, quite often riding the success of far bigger films. Obviously this one and the original film was obviously riding the success of the Alien films, but he's done lots of kind of like fantasy movies that were, you know, riding the success of things like Conan. And it's easy to critique these films, to be honest with you. And I've seen plenty of YouTube reviewers do kind of like ironic reviews, taking the piss and saying how crap things were in the kind of the 80s and early 90s, and you know, it's easy to take the mick off these days, but I think you kind of need to try and look at the time that it was made and what was the kind of the level of certainly straight to video entertainment at that time, because I think it's easy to take the piss these days about films like this. But I think there is some still stuff to enjoy here. Most notably for me, I preferred this one over Forbidden World because it had Marc Singer in it. The original movie didn't really have a kind of a more of a well-known action star. Singer, coming off the success really of the Beastmaster film, was certainly a more recognisable face. And although Bryan Cranston wasn't really a name at that point, he still proves then he still had some reasonable acting chops. So I do think this movie benefits from having you know, Singer really, because obviously he was the name then, as a kind of a leading man, and he's certainly more of your action hero archetype, which the original movie kind of lacks, to be honest with you. But what else could we say maybe that works in this film? The film is only 72 minutes, I believe, so it's quite a brisk film. So, and you've got quite a lot going on, to be fair. It does lag a little bit in the middle, but for the most part, I think it's quite well paced. I got to say, I think some of the kind of the practical effects for a low budget film are still relatively impressive. Marc Singer's kind of assistant, this robot, this droid, I think it's called Tinpan. I really enjoyed the kind of his kind of like setup, to be honest. I think he looks quite cool. It's just a man in a suit. It's not like C-3PO where it's all kind of all over him and stuff like that. But I've got to say the headpiece I think looks pretty good. It reminds me of the torture droids from Jabba's palace. But, you know, I thought it was quite good. And also I think the actual creature effects, although, yeah, they're not going to be as good as a mainstream Hollywood film like Alien and things like that. The design-wise, it's still quite fun. I won't say it's amazing and it's not good, but it's still, when we see it's kind of like this huge kind of creature, obviously a practical effect back then, I still think it looks quite fun and quite impressive. When I saw this back in the good old VHS days, I was suitably impressed. And I think this creature's certainly better than the films that sort of came out like Galaxy of Terror or Insemnoid and things like that. So that was, you know, that was that as well. And I have to say, I think there is an attempt here, or at least it seems like it, to have a little bit more going on behind the scenes in regards to the politics of what is happening. So in regards to the characters trying to create this virus and the kind of the politics that are involved in that, sacrificing the few to save the many. You know, it's never really delved into a great detail, but at least it's kind of brought up, I think, and it gives it, you know, back when I saw it when I was a kid, you know, these things kind of went over my head, but look, watching it now, there is at least an attempt here to have some type of scientific debate. And I've got to say, even back then, you can see that Bryan Cranston had some acting chops. And I've got to admit, it's easy to critique the acting in these type of movies. And yeah, there's plenty of cheesy dialogue. There's plenty of kind of cheesy acting. But I will say, there's things that involve the scientists actually talking around about pseudoscience and how they're going to develop the vaccine, yada, yada, yada. I've got to say, I thought not just Bryan Cranston, but some of the other characters as well, actually did a fairly good job. In actual fact, if we transition to maybe what doesn't work, I think Marc Singer, actually, to be fair, is the one who has the most kind of stiffness in his acting, so to speak. I think Marc Singer, when he was making this, and this is only an assumption by myself, kind of knows it's just a sort of a silly, cheesy B movie, so he's kind of somewhat going through the motions, to be fair, and it's, you know, his character seems to be more of a kind of like a cowboyish sort of style approach to, you know, this kind of character. We don't know anything about him. He's completely a blank slate, to be fair. It does, even though this was actually released in '91, it feels like an 80s movie. There's kind of plenty of kind of dry ice in these kind of corridors and that are kind of sparsely, you know, decorated and the set designs, things like that. I think some of the editing is horrible in this movie. There's some really bad transitions from one scene to another. And it feels really choppy, like they've kind of just made an edit, but then decided to chop up some more bits in it and hasn't had much oversight. At least that's how it seems to me. Although I quite like the creature design, there's no getting around the fact that when this thing moves, it kind of looks just like a wobbly polystyrene monster. There's scenes, for example, where Marc Singer's trying to kind of fight it off, and we have all these kind of tendrils and claws and things that come out, and you just see Marc Singer like throwing himself around the room with these kind of like a wobbly styrofoam claw kind of coming towards him and things like this. It kind of looks funny, to be honest with you, and when we see the creature move from one place to another, they don't have the ability to make it kind of move or walk and things, so it literally just glides across the floor like it's been pulled by some film crew off set and things like that. So it's kind of cheesy, and yes, there's plenty of other sort of like silly things that happen. Marc Singer goes out into the atmosphere of this planet with the scene preceding it, sort of saying, oh, the atmosphere is going to kill you. So you can't stay out there for very long. But he kind of goes out there without any protective gear, just got a white overall that he doesn't even do up. He's just not even zipped up. So it's quite funny. So yes, this movie is totally cheesy. I still had fun with it though. I think this is a cheesy, fun film. I haven't seen Forbidden World for quite a long time, to be honest with you. So it's hard for me to kind of compare it to that original film, because I haven't seen that film for a while, so it's not really fresh in my mind. But I know for the most part that people probably prefer that one. So this is, I think this is still cheesy fun. I think this movie benefits from having Marc Singer as a kind of a more recognisable leading man. And I do remember, I always preferred the robot in this movie compared to Forbidden World. I thought the design was kind of cooler on that one. And, you know, I think still there are some kind of good special effects, at least for a low budget kind of movie. And yes, they're very derivative of Alien. There's no kind of getting around that. But I still think it looks quite fun, and you know, it is a pure B movie, but it is still one to enjoy if you can accept, or you are understanding of that kind of style of films, I think. And if you've not seen it, it might be worth checking out. It's no Battle Beyond the Stars, which I legitimately think is a good film, and you know, it's probably a 4 out of 10 if we're being honest. One day I might actually try and review Forbidden World again. Maybe give it a comparison, but yeah, it's you know, it's by no means a good film, but I think there is some enjoyment to be had. But it is obviously hampered by a quick production, you know, cheap sets, and some kind of real, you know, elements here that don't really make sense by today's standards. But it's easy to pick holes in movies now. 4 out of 10, I actually feel like, part of me wants to give it a little bit higher than that, but I have to be realistic about the film that's in front of me. But I enjoy it a little bit more than that, to be fair. But realistically, I've got to say it's a 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? And how do you think it compares to Forbidden World, if you have seen that one? Leave us a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.